Welcome to the National E-Learning Center podcast series about digital credentials to promote trusted online learning for all. Today, credentials play a critical role in recognizing the competencies earned by the learners, especially with the phenomenal growth of online learning for upskilling and reskilling. It is essential for us to understand the role of digital credentials in the life learning process and ecosystem. So, in this special podcast series, we will explore aspects of credentials from innovation, standards, and policymaking, and their impact on bridging between the labor market demand and supply from the perspective of academia and industry. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by special guests, Dr. Rob Abel, Chief Executive Officer of OneEdTech, and Mr. Mark Luba, Vice President, Product Management at OneEdTech. Without further ado, let's welcome our guests to the podcast. Welcome, Dr. Abel, and welcome, Mr. Mark. May you please tell us more about yourselves?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I'm Rob Abel. I'm a high-tech industry veteran who switched about halfway through his career to focus on education and education technology. So I used to live and work in the Silicon Valley, but now I'm actually in Florida. And a big part of that switch was taking over the leadership of what was called the IMS Global Learning Consortium, which is now called OneEdTech. And our passion here at OneEdTech, and my passion, is to really help leverage technology to help improve education at all levels. And my background is technical. I have two technical degrees from two different private colleges. I also have a business degree from Stanford, and I also have a doctorate in education. And the amazing thing about where we are today, I think, is that we are finally seeing some real advancement in the use of digital technology to improve learning. I think the pandemic was one example of the power of digital learning. Not that it solves all problems, but that it certainly helped get through a difficult circumstance. But we're seeing the potential for digital materials, digital applications, learning platforms, student information systems, and the use of digital technology to really make the lives of teachers and students better. So that's why I'm here.
I'm Mark Luba. My background is primarily corporate information technology, and I became involved with education approximately 2005 with an online university, American Public University System, and I learned a tremendous amount about some of the issues and challenges offering education, and I became very interested in a particular pedagogy, competency-based education. So I started consulting in that sphere for a few years, and I turned to OneEdTech, which was previously IMS Global, for some assistance to partner on open standards for competency-based education. And ultimately, I went to work with Rob and the team as Vice President now of Product Management. And I've been involved with competency-based education and the issues surrounding that, including now digital credentials, for about 8 years or so. I think it's a very interesting time in education because we have this convergence, a rapid change in the workforce and the needs of industry, and also questioning of both the cost and the relevance of a 4-year degree for every type of job opportunity for many, of course. And so this convergence is leading to greater demand for these incremental forms of recognition and achievement. And so it's really the perfect storm opportunity for the growth of this, new innovation.
Mr. Mark, when you say competency-based education, are you referring to K-12 higher education, training, or all of them?
Primarily higher education, and the concept is competency-based education, and it emphasizes the ability to demonstrate your mastery of a particular topic. So it emphasizes performance and demonstration over the completion of a test. So knowledge is an important aspect of the competency, but then also is performance. So it's Primarily it's called authentic assessment.
So is this what we call micro-credentials, or how is it different from micro-credentials?
Oh, very good. Thank you. So a micro-credential would be a recognition of a particular competency. So if you've demonstrated a skill, and that skill is, comprised of doing some particular tasks, for example, or producing some work product, it would be a strong relationship between that and the micro-credential that is issued to recognize that you have demonstrated that competency.
I can maybe add a little bit to that. So if the one way to think about it is that, if in a traditional educational transcript, you've taken some number of courses and you've gotten a grade of some sort for each course. That's sort of the traditional approach to the transcript. Certainly here in the USA, I'm not sure about in the Middle East, but the idea of competency-based education and micro-credentials applied to that would be that in a particular course, or even across all of the courses, but let's just say, to simplify it, within a particular course, you actually learned how to do 3 or 4 primary things. In other words, you develop 3 or 4 competencies through that course. So the idea is that as part of getting the course grade, you would also get micro-credentials that would show that you had achieved those certain competencies. Say, for instance, you learned how to program in your computer science course or something along those lines, or you learned about analytics and so forth. So it's a better way, we like to say it's a better way for learners to tell their story, because it actually provides more information about what the learner is capable of doing, which then allows them to match up against opportunities more specifically than just the grades in a grade in a course.
Okay, could you please elaborate on the importance of having learner records, digital credentials, competencies, and academic exchange?
I would just say that at the high level, the importance about, there are many, many, many benefits of digital records compared to paper-based records. And I'm sure Mark will have more details, but one very, very obvious one is that a digital record using the right technology is instantly verifiable. So there actually is a way to, through the internet or through a digitally signed document, to be able to understand that this is an authentic credential without having to go back to the source and get a copy of a paper document of some sort. The other benefit is that, as we just talked about briefly, the idea that through the digital credentials, you can actually enumerate more precisely what the student has learned in terms of what was covered, even how it was assessed can be covered and stored in that digital credential in a way that is machine readable, meaning the machine can decompile that, can use that information to compare to opportunities and the requirement for opportunities, but also could decompile it so that a human being can read it as well. So the idea in our minds of digital credentials is that they are much more easily usable and shareable to do what we want a credential to do, which is to connect a learner to opportunities.
So the comprehensive learner record standard is intended to be used at the earliest possible opportunity where a record of learning occurs for a student. So primary school. And as Rob said, extensive amounts of information can be collected for that learner, including, of course, what they're good in and areas that they haven't achieved standard, for example, and they're falling behind. So as that learner progresses through his or her learning journey, the teachers and the guardians and administrators will be able to have access to this very rich database of information to help to support the learner's development by understanding where the strengths are and where the areas of opportunity are. And those records also will survive as the student either to a higher level of education or to different geographic areas in schools and school districts. So having this very rich record of learning that contains a vast amount of information on the capabilities and progression of that individual will be very useful to make sure that they maximize their education and into their careers as well. It's designed to transition into the workplace and be used as a way to recognize achievement and progress in the workplace as well.
Here, I just wanted to highlight an initiative that the National E-Learning Center is working on, which is called My Learner Passport. It is exactly what you have mentioned. It is a comprehensive learning record that records all the activities of the learners from certificates and credentials. Then it will be readable with the AI systems that can perhaps connect the learners to the labor needs and the market force.
Totally agree. And
Very good.
are you adopting an open standard?
Yes, definitely. We're currently looking at the open standards for the digital badges, and you just mentioned the competencies-based standards at the beginning. Yes, we're looking at this too, but also we have at the National E-Learning Center our own e-learning standards.
Okay, well, that's good. If you're adopting the open standards, then those records will be usable worldwide across many platforms.
And that is our plan, especially that the world now is open and we want to go global. And this is one of our visions, is to have the competitive citizenship. So the citizens of Saudi Arabia, the Saudi citizens, are able to work anywhere globally by upskilling or reskilling based on any system out there.
We share your vision.
Moving forward, how do you see all of these three interoperable, the learning records, digital credentials, competencies, and academic exchange?
Okay, very well. The three open standards that are supporting this work, as you mentioned, are open badges, the comprehensive learner record standard, and CASE, the Competency and Academic Standards Exchange. And the open badge standard is used to recognize a single achievement. And it could be any type of achievement related to education or work, but it's primarily to recognize one achievement. The comprehensive learner record is a collection of achievements that are issued by one organization to a learner, and in many cases are related together in some way, such as a pathway or progression of courses that depend on one another and represent a pathway. So the comprehensive learner record contains badges, but can also contain achievements that are not badges. And those achievements and badges can be connected together in useful ways. That's it. The CASE standard is used to create linkages between the credentials and open published frameworks that describe credentials or describe certification requirements or describe state issued standards that are required to advance between grades. So the CASE standard is a publishing standard where each element is provided a unique identifier, and that unique identifier can be embedded in the badge or in the comprehensive learner record in order to refer to that framework for a richer understanding of what the learner has accomplished. Those three work in tandem. You do not need to implement CASE initially to have a very successful credentialing program. But when you do implement CASE, it makes the credential richer and more effective.
I just wanted to go back to something. The standards used for the comprehensive learner records, or in our case, My Learning Passport. Why do you recommend these standards to be adopted on the national level? These standards, it's called the Open Badges, right? The Open Badges standards.
So if you have an achievement that you want to recognize, often to associate your brand to it as an organization for a particular discrete achievement, then the open badge is used for that. And it's very useful to provide very short-term feedback to a learner who is proceeding down a pathway. As they accomplish a certain milestone, they can be issued a badge. And that's a sense of pride and accomplishment. They can share it on their social media profiles, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or other, a motivating factor in their educational pursuit. It's common that these open badges are used to encourage individuals to continue to proceed with their education, and so often they're related together, so that once you get to a certain level of completion, you earn even more significant badge. So that's called stacking the badges.
Yeah, I was going to add something here that, Mark is talking about the, how the digital credentials or credentials can be incrementally achieved and added together and so forth. There's also a technical aspect of this that has to do with the technology ecosystem that you would be implementing, let's say, across the country or across the region or across the world. So, for instance, and that's another major value of these standards, whether it's the Open Badges standard or the Comprehensive Learner Record standard. So, for instance, different universities might have different suppliers, commercial suppliers or nonprofit suppliers, but suppliers who are building their student information system. If the idea is that somewhere we want to be able to collect and exchange the Comprehensive Learner Record, or in your case, the My Learner Passport, right? That those transcripts or those records from those student information systems can contribute directly to that My Learner Transport if they're in the standard, if they're in Open Badge standard or Comprehensive Learner Record standard, because then that system becomes interoperable with whatever system you're using to store the My Learner Passport, just as an example. And it goes on, because there could also be, say, a major publisher, an educational publisher might have a program or a course of some sort, say on cybersecurity, where at the end of that course, could be online, could be completely online, the student earns a cybersecurity credential. Well, if they issue that credential using the Open Badge standard, then that Open Badge can be immediately transferred and put into the My Learner Passport, or stored somewhere where the user themselves can curate that content. So we're trying to build an ecosystem, not just of credentials, but the platforms, the technology that will support those credentials and move those credentials around from the various places where they're issued to where they're actually utilized.
Could you please share a success story that adopted these standards for upskilling and reskilling?
What would be one of the best ones, Mark? I don't know.
I like Wichita State University. Personally, they have a focus on relatively lower skilled job positions that historically were not there. The education program was not for credit, and this group of the career and professional education division of this university was able to convince their administrators that they really should begin on the path to offering credit for some of these programs. And so they converted what was primarily a continuing education unit, as it's called, program to one that the learner could actually get credit towards a certificate, and obviously towards a degree. And so they're combining the motivating factor of issuing these badges as the learner is accumulating their achievements, but also adding to the individual's degree pathway. And that's been very, very well received and has been very successful. So there are certain I'd say, traditional barriers in education system that are now being rethought and be with the emphasis on doing what's right for the individual learner and less so what's perhaps thought to be best for the institution. And that's a perfect example of that, where they broke some rules and now are providing pathways to success for a large group of learners using micro-credentials as the vehicle for doing so.
I would say another great example that would be different, and there's great diversity, as you mentioned, in terms of how these credentials are being, digital credentials, micro-credentials are being used. But Western Governors University is one of the more innovative online universities and also one of the larger ones in the USA. And what they're very, very good at, and what they've used the concept of competency-based learning along with digital credentials is to basically meet the students where they are. So in other words, a student can come in with prior experience and can assess their way through a competency without having to go and retake a course or retake a module or whatever. And this is particularly important, right, in the reskilling context, right, to be able to move through, to get recognition for what you've learned before quickly, and then move through to new skills that you're looking to get. So that's a much larger scale situation and slightly different than Wichita State, but they're all different. We even have examples from K-12 where schools where digital credentials are being used in kind of ranging from innovative ways that don't necessarily change that much, other than they help the students and the teachers understand the students' progress better, to more state level initiatives where the digital credentials are actually used to help students get jobs, directly out of K-12 education.
Related examples, I really love the credit for prior learning, but that's another that Western Governors is using. That's another example of institutions breaking tradition to allow an individual to take a test first and maybe accumulate credit or partial credit without having to take the instruction and in the course. So it's really focusing on your competency, not seat time, as it's called. And again, all of these traditions are being reconsidered in favor of a more efficient and more equitable process.
We talked about the adoption of standards at the national level and the benefits for the learners, where they can use their badges, they can share it and recognize their skills. But what about the benefits for the institutions here?
It's actually a quality benefit, because there is rigor associated with the process of ensuring that your instruction communicates offers learning outcomes that are relevant, and that your assessments clearly evaluate competency. So there's a lot of rigor that must occur in the academic program. And what institutions are doing is they're reevaluating their programs to ensure that there's a very strong relationship between their instruction and their assessment and industry needs, the explicit requirements that they learn from industry partners. So it's a very much a quality assurance improvement that is driven by the rigor that these processes involve.
And I'll add that the one of the key motivations for all universities of all types is, again, what we like to call, helping learners tell their story. But what we really mean by that is just give the students, more value for the costs and the time of their formal education by recognizing that they have achieved beyond simply a grade in a course, and recognizing that they might have skills and capabilities that are beyond just getting a grade in a course. And so one of the really interesting things at the meetings this week is that we had the situations such as Wichita State, which Mark mentioned, which is really very much about, relationships between a university or college and an employer or employers, and trying to help the students, get the value from their degree. But we also had universities there that were major, R1, Research One universities, such as Penn State and University of Michigan and Arizona State University. And why were they there, and what were they talking about? Well, the reason they were there is because various departments, not uniformly across the whole university, but various departments. A very popular one is engineering schools, which is something that I'm very familiar with because of my trainings. They want to help their students understand what they have learned and what they are capable of doing, and recognize skills. I went to a undergraduate college called Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, and I had a degree in physics, but I came out of with that bachelor's degree knowing how to basically program and even build computers. I had no credential that said that other than my degree, but it turns out that some of the employers knew that. They knew that people coming out of this program, had these capabilities, and therefore were more valuable coming right out of school than the normal student. The point being that the digital credentials allow the university to pass that value on to the learner, the student, so they can show that. So I think we're going to see, all universities adopting this approach over the next, say, 20 years. Some are going to move faster and in a bigger way because their university or college is more dependent on the direct relationship with employers. Others are going to move sort of slower in pockets, but I think they all are going to move. And I really do think that if you're the president of a university, if you're running a university of any size, this is an issue and an opportunity that you can see will be important in the future because it just makes so much sense.
I do agree with you. And here it's worth mentioning another initiative that we're working on at the National E-Learning Center, that is the GPSX. It's more of a career navigation system for the learners where all the job requirements are recorded, and then the learner will benefit from this system in two ways, either by finding jobs that fit their skills or by upskilling and reskilling based on the market needs, the labor market needs. That being said, I have a question. What are the challenges that you see?
Well, I mean, we're used to challenges in One Ed Tech because we're trying to change things. And whenever you try to change things, there are many challenges, many challenges. But the overarching challenge, right, is that you're to get to the future on this topic of micro credentials. There are many parties involved in order to make it work. And, from the issuers of credentials of all the various types and sizes to the users of credentials to the technology companies that will be enabling the ability to create digital credentials, share credentials, right? So obviously there's opportunity in all of that potential there. And that's what brings folks to the table. A lot of things have to take shape at the same time, right? So this is a very typical market development. Some people call it crossing the chasm. Some people call it the innovator's dilemma. There's many theories about how it works, but the bottom line is that getting the various parties to cooperate requires them all to have an incentive. They all have to see the value. So what tends to happen in situations like this, and really all the situations where we're developing new standards to try to advance, accelerate an area of improvement in education, is that we have to find that coalition of the willing, the ones that see the benefits and that are willing to partner together and move in a smaller space. So at the conference this week, you saw the exhibitors there. I guess we had probably about a dozen. These are companies that have bought in, so to speak, into this. And then what you saw in the attendees were organizations and people that, to a large degree, had bought in at some level. And so one of the really fascinating things that goes on at meetings like this is it's not just about information. It's about really building partnerships that build out the ecosystem. And so that was a kind of a general answer. Maybe Mark has some more specific challenges because there are many, but that's the overarching challenge.
And we've been very fortunate these last, 6 or 7 years to have organized a community that has, in fact, taken up these credentials and this way of thinking and focusing on learner achievement. The challenge now is to engage with the employers and to help them see the benefits of these digital records. First, with the talent leaders, the persons that are hiring managers and leaders in the organization, but also their technology providers, the human resource systems that are used to filter and to find and recruit. And so, but we are working on that challenge in a very focused way. So we're optimistic that we'll be able to make significant progress in the next couple of years.
Yes, hopefully. Thank you, Dr. Abel and Mr. Mark, for your valuable insight and time. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening to the National E-Learning Center podcast with your host, Al-Hanouf. We hope you enjoyed our episode about the interoperability between learners' records, digital credentials, competencies, and academic exchange. As always, you can visit our website, nelc.gov.sa, to know more about our news. And don't forget to check our resources page. That's it for now. See you next time.